Hey guys, in this video, I want to share with you one of the dangers of hiring a bad co-host to manage your short-term or midterm rental. There's a lot of obvious reasons why you don't want to hire a bad co-host, but I'm not going to talk about those. That we had one situation where we were hired to be the property manager for a new property that had a bad co-host before working with us, and it's a really interesting lessons we learned here that I want to share with you. If this is your first time, my name is Alan Duan, and I own a property management company in Los Angeles where we manage midterm rentals mostly, as well as some short-term rentals. So on my channel, if you see my other videos, I'm sharing with you all what I learned, what I have learned, and what I'm learning from my business, and in hopes of helping you manage your short-term or midterm rental. So thanks for checking out this video. So let's get right into it. This one will be a short one. I don't have any visuals to share, so just gonna be me talking. But really, this is something I thought would be very valuable to get out there and share with you guys. So some of you may be familiar, or if you already have a property on Airbnb, you may have experienced Airbnb in the past 6 months or so has become much more strict in a number of areas. So I won't get into all of that because that can make this video very long. But one of the areas that they've become more strict in is the preventing duplicate listings, but more specifically, um, preventing bad hosts from recreating a listing that has bad reviews, right? So again, if you have experience in this space, you probably are familiar with this kind of trick where if you get bad reviews, if a property had bad reviews, sometimes it's easier when it comes to your average rating to just delete the listing and start over, right? So that's actually against Airbnb's policy, and Airbnb, of course, wants to figure out ways to enforce this, and prevent this from happening. The spirit of the law, the spirit of the rule, which I agree with mostly, is Airbnb wants to prevent bad hosts from continuing to operate on their platform, right? Because this affects the guest experience, which then affects people's Airbnb experience, right? If you book an Airbnb, and I hope you haven't had this kind of experience, you book a property on Airbnb and you show up and it's just like a mess, right? That's going to affect how you view Airbnb as a service, as a company, um, even though it was the host's fault, right? So Airbnb's goal and the incentive is to weed out bad hosts on the platform. So if someone is a bad host and they get bookings, and the typical mechanism is guests get bad reviews. That's the system that now will the feedback that will make that host no longer get any bookings because that listing has horrible reviews. Hence, why Airbnb wants to prevent someone to just recreating a listing and continuing their bad hosting behavior, right? Um, I believe, and this is just my opinion because I don't have evidence of this, but I believe Airbnb getting more strict about this recently has to do with them using different methods and tools of identifying. A very obvious one, of course, is it's the same exact address, right? But let's say the photos are similar. But something Airbnb is doing where they are detecting this new listing, right, that's recreated and recognizing it as a duplicate listing. Uh, what Airbnb calls it is their circumvention policy, I believe they call it. Essentially, the rule is you cannot create a new listing as a bad host to circumvent, um, you know, sorry, let me take a step back. If there's a bad listing with bad reviews, there's penalties put on it. So a host is not allowed to circumvent those restrictions on the listing by creating a new one. So that's what Airbnb calls a circumvention policy. And you can look it up. If you Google it, it's one of the Airbnb's help article pages. So so that's the background I want to share. Getting to the specific situation we dealt with the property is so we had a new property who signed up with us as a new property manager. We're doing our typical onboarding. We knew from the conversations with the owner, the reason they're signing, they're coming to us is because they're unhappy with their previous co-host. They told us a little bit about the previous co-host, which was just like entertainingly bad, like how like it was funny how bad it was. Some of the things the co-host was doing, I'm sure wasn't funny for the property owner, of course. Yeah, so we of course created a new listing, started doing our typical onboarding, and then we get a message from Airbnb saying that this is a duplicate listing against our policy. We're taking it down. They allowed the whole appeal process. We appealed and gave all the information. They still denied it, which was frustrating, of course, for us. But as we did more research and looking into this, essentially how Airbnb viewed it is they essentially viewed me and my company as the same host trying to circumvent their policy by creating a new listing under a new account, right? Because if you think about it, if you create the same listing again, but on your same exact Airbnb account, that's easier to catch. So the trick might be, let me use another Airbnb account that I own and create the listing again. So in Airbnb's eyes, that's what they perceive as happening. Even though I told them we are entirely a different company, I showed them the contract. The owner even verified they hired a new company. That's a different point. Airbnb stuck with their decision. But the lesson learned, we've done everything we can with the appeal, and that's, again, it makes sense to me that they would have made an exception because of our situation. Sorry, the owner did the right thing, right, by firing bad co-host, and they still want to put their property on Airbnb, which is good for Airbnb, right? They get more revenue, and they want to hire a better manager, right, and do it the right way moving forward, but didn't work out. But the lesson learned here is whatever problems the previous co-host had with the property and violations of the host, requirements, complaints that the guests had must have been so severe that essentially that status wasn't attached to the host anymore. That status, as far as in Airbnb's eyes, that this is a problem property, was now attached to the property itself. This is the key part I want you guys to catch. So that means even though the owner went to go find a better manager or a better co-host, either way, the problems kind of on file with Airbnb were attached to the property. So now that a new co-host or new property manager is managing the property, those problems actually come along with the property. They're not stuck with the host, right? And the old way is that a bad co-host will have all the reviews on their profile and they'll get docked. Airbnb will penalize them, but now it actually sticks to the property. So where we're at today, the property is not on Airbnb. We can't essentially, unless we figure out there's one more thing we're trying, but the chances are, I would say maybe 50% chance of working. If this strategy doesn't work that we're trying now, essentially this property, as far as what Airbnb told us, can't be listed on Airbnb forever. Literally, the property got banned from being on Airbnb because the co-host who managed it was so bad. So that is when I kind of put those pieces together, it was like a big light bulb moment. The cost of having bad co-hosts is not just, let's say you have bad co-hosts for 1 year. It's not just underperformance for 1 year. It's not just, you're making less revenue for 1 year. It's not just the place gets trashed and you have to go fix it and clean it up and put it back on the market. The danger or the greatest cost of having a bad co-host is they could do so bad with your property that Airbnb will no longer let you put your property on Airbnb. Crazy, huh? So keep this in mind. Before getting to this point, there's already so many reasons you don't want a bad co-host, right? If you're working with a co-host or a property manager, you want to one of the key things we emphasize with our clients is, and if you are the owner, you want to demand this of your co-host and property manager, is communication. Now there's a difference. Don't be the micromanager who's asking all this, how many inquiries did we get? Or like, what did we say to this person? Or, what kind of soap are you buying, right? That stuff actually doesn't matter, right? For you and your goals. Maybe the number of inquiries, right? But you do want to put the expectation on your co-host that they are updating you so you see what they're doing, right? I've seen a number of situations where we had actually another property sign up with us recently, a similar situation where they had they had a co-host they were unhappy with. You want to make sure your co-host or property manager is providing you the transparency and feedback so then you know what's going on, right? The right things. Again, that's a deeper topic I could go into. But yeah, so this is the current state of Airbnb. Again, I love Airbnb in a lot of ways because they are a great marketing partner. I don't like them in some ways, but that's life and that's business. But hope that's helpful for you. If you want to learn more about midterm rentals, besides these videos, I do host a school community about MTRs. Check it out in the description. It's a free group. We do weekly live calls, and there's a bunch of stuff for you guys to help you there.